We're ready when you are.
Okay, welcome guys to the weekly meetup. We have a few topics to go over as usual. Unicron said that he wouldn't be here at this week's meeting because he wasn't feeling too well. I think he said that he was sick, but I'm sure he'll listen to the recording after. So, some of the things that we had to go over is, well, if you guys haven't noticed, CoinMarketCap finally re-added the total supply and circulating supply, so that's working as intended, I believe. Um, Even though it took them very long to do. Um, Another thing that is going to happen really soon, probably this will happen tomorrow. This will be transitioned into the main site if there aren't any like major problems found. Give me one sec, I'll link it in the meetup chat. Oh, okay, there we go. Crypto Mom also linked it. So yeah, so this has to do with the main redesign of the main website, and it includes the white paper, as I had previously said before. I think it makes it a lot easier for people to navigate and understand the project, and it looks a lot cleaner than our previous design was. Um, Other than that, in terms of the GitHub, we have started, or I have started to move a lot of the stuff surrounding the project out of like my personal GitHub account and moving it more into a Novusphere GitHub account. And I'll be looking to more so maintain a separate branch that I'm working on personally, and we'll be pushing those updates to the other um, the main Novusphere branch? I'll answer that question after I'm done going over the major things that I have to road crypto. Um, so an example of like what we've been moving over to the new GitHub is let me just show two links real fast here. So if you're on the beta website and you go to the wallet download, it actually links to a document that's on the newer GitHub account. So those are two examples of two documents that we've already moved over to there. And any other like documents similar to this will be looking to move over to the new GitHub account. I think it's a better way of organizing the project under, the project's name as opposed to organizing it under my GitHub account. Um, So we are looking at releasing 0.1 of the application layer later this week. I have plans to talk with CodeBlue tomorrow, um, and any other application developers that are interested in using it. I'll be releasing some informal documentation and helping them with it. So what this will allow them to do, as I said before, is it will allow them to start building some of the Novusphere applications that they have planned in advance prior to when we launch the network. And then even after there's network integration, their application should function as intended. And none of that should really change too much. So uh, there can be changes in the application layer between the very first release, which we're expecting to be this week, between now and July, end of July, but we're expecting to have a more finalized release by the end of July. And at that point, it would be fairly safe for developers to build on it without worrying that there's going to be any breaking changes that might break their applications and they might have to refactor later on. So another thing that has recently come up is this has already been mentioned in the Whale Club, but I thought I'd throw this out there since I know that not everyone is registered and a member of the Whale Club, even those who have the amounts to participate in it. We have started to offer Atmos-backed collateralized loans for Bitcoin, or well, I have anyways. So I'm mainly doing this as a way to give options to people who may be holding large amounts of Atmos and may feel a little dissuaded in the sense that They feel that they can pursue uh, gains in the market elsewhere. So while that may not be, true or not true, if that's what they want to do, I'm giving them that option. So it allows you to collateralize your Atmos in a guaranteed loan where you can buy it back potentially at a fixed rate. So if you have more than 500,000 at most, you can message me about that and I can go over the details with you regarding that. And as well, if you have over 500,000 at most, you qualify for the Whale Club, so I can also get you added to that channel if you want. Some of the other things that we've been looking at is, and this is mainly moreover in the stuff that I've been having Unicron look at, is we've been working on estimating the RAM fees in terms of what we would need to operate successfully on EOS. And we've been also looking at ways that we can minimize any other sort of fees or anything that we would have to pay for using their blockchain. One thing that we are aware of is if you're a Steam user and you use it a lot, you might know this, which is how the bandwidth model works. It limits your resources on the network so you're not spamming it. So occasionally using Steam, you might get a message that says something like you can't perform so many actions. You have to wait a bit. So we already know that it's actually possible that if we have any EOS that we have on their chain and we have it staking for resources dedicated towards Atmos, we can delegate those resources towards Atmos holders. So not only would, if you had EOS on the chain, give you access to network resources, but also holding Atmos itself would give you access to EOS resources on the EOS chain. So there's a few things that we're continuing to look into in regards to viability of using EOS and how we would go about doing that. Another thing that we are, this is more so on my end that I've been looking into, is I've reached out to, I recently read an article by EOS Argentina, and what they were looking to do was integrate the ability to use TypeScript to write EOS smart contracts. So right now, the standards set by Dan and his team have been to mainly use C++, but WebAssembly, which is what EOS really uses, any language can be compiled to WebAssembly. It's more so a matter of ensuring that there's a compiler that's capable of doing that. TypeScript being a web-based language derived from JavaScript, is intended to be used with WebAssembly, and I think it's actually a great way forward to allowing a lot of more modern developers who may not be as experienced with C++ to allow to use EOS to build smart contracts, and it might be something that we look to potentially use in our project as well. So I'm interested in actually collaborating with these guys if we decide to go the EOS route and to continue to flesh out the TypeScript library regarding EOS smart contract development. So we'll see how that goes, but I think it's a good avenue to pursue if we go the EOS route, because I can already see that a lot of the developers who would come into our project will likely be web-based developers. So using and supporting a language like TypeScript, which is already aimed at web developers, I think is a good way forward. That as well, with the fact that it's actually a lot easier to model and test a lot of the upcoming code for Novusphere. So when I say upcoming code, I mean the code that has to do more so with the bounty systems and the systems actually involved in how Novusphere works on the more decentralized side, not so much to do with the whole database concept. So I think that's a major summary of all the things that are going on at this time. Um, So just to recap on that, new website to come up fairly soon, which has been revised. We've been moving stuff over to the new GitHub and getting things a little more organized. Public release of the application layer, or the first version of it anyways, will be happening later this week. I'll be working on Code Blue to give him the documentation and provide any other developers who would be looking to use the application layer to do some stuff. We are now offering some Atmos back collateralized loans. If you have more than 500k Atmos, you can contact me and find out the full details for that. I can also get you added to the Whale Club. And we're continuing to look into a few other various aspects of EOS and its viability in terms of our project. And the only other major thing that I have to announce, aside from that, is on the weekends upcoming, which I believe are the 3rd, 10th, and 17th. I will not be available those weekends. So the community is free to have meetings on those weekends if they want, but I won't be able to participate in those weekends. I will be, however, on the Discord during the weeks of those weeks. So if anyone needs anything from me, I'm still contactable. So I think that's more or less everything I needed to go over. So if anyone has any questions or anything that they would like to share, that'd be great.
Anybody with any questions on what was covered?
Oh, I see Notorious in the chat. Yeah, Road Crypto had asked earlier where you've been, so I don't know if you want to tackle that question.
Is this thing on?
Yeah,
Hello?
we can hear you.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, yeah, no, sorry. I've had some health issues. I was in the hospital. I just recently got out, so I'm doing a lot better now. But sorry I haven't been around, guys.
We're glad you're doing okay.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were going to make this meeting or not, so I was going to answer that question, and then you joined later, so I figured I'd just pass it over to you.
Yeah, no problem. No, I legitimately just forgot. I'm currently in a different time zone right now. I'm in Central Time. Normally I'm on Eastern, so I just forgot the time. But no, sorry I missed it. So everybody catch that staking thing that Mr. Wicks is up to? Anybody see what's going on with that?
Yeah, Luce is in here. He's about to mute me. Yeah. But yeah, we had a little release over at Vega on an announcement on some ways that you can stake Vega, and pretty close to releasing the smart contract. We got to work on a user interface so that people can interact with it.
No, I was going over some stuff actually, and it brought to mind some questions for Asphyxia in terms of the move to EOS, or is it called EOS or EOS? I don't know.
So interestingly enough, Dan, the CTO of Block One, refers to it as EOS, and Brendan Bloomer, the CEO, actually refers to it as EOS. So I don't think there's actually consensus on
so there's no company
which one it's supposed to be called.
Okay, I see. Interesting.
They've also stated it doesn't actually stand for anything, but
when
there
it,
has
you know,
been speculation
when it
that
goes
it stands
to the moon,
for Ethereum on steroids.
It sounds so much better when you can say EOS. Like, you know.
I mean, it just seems like we're leaning heavily toward going with EOS. I mean, I saw Mr. Wicks released some stuff with smart contracts and staking, and I was just thinking to myself, like, if we're not building our own blockchain layer, are we going to be utilizing a lot of the same technology, or are we just kind of like dumping the aspirations for the higher level blockchain functions, just focusing on?
Well, it depends what you're talking about exactly. Are you talking about what's changing in terms of how, let's say, Mr. Wicks would be using Novusphere? Or
yeah,
what
exactly.
are you... Well, nothing would really change too much in that case, right? He's still going to be storing information on Novusphere, and he'll still be using... so in the case of Vega, Vega's really going to be interacting with the application layer. So after there is documentation for the application layer, the informal documentation, which should be finalized by the end of July, he can actually start building an application that would be compliant with Novusphere going forward, even before the network has been launched, even if the network is either launched as its own blockchain or if it's launched on EOS. So
Gotcha.
not
Wait,
much actually
you're
changes
saying
for
as
him.
of July 1st, was it? It's going to be.
So the plan is to have the application layer done and ready by July the 1st. Or sorry, not July the 1st, August the 1st. So the end of July.
Okay, and then you're going to release like documentation.
Yes. So at this week, I'm looking to put out some informal documentation relating to the very first release that will be happening later this week. So, but there are possibilities that there might be some changes throughout the course of next month that could break some things in regards to changes that a developer might have when using the project.
Okay, interesting. I mean, I think one of the big steps going forward for both Vega and for the Novusphere, getting use cases and the application layer, I'm really looking forward to in terms of that. So, anybody else have anything to talk about? Rogue Crypto finally speak.
What's the latest with Code Blue? I don't think some of us caught that on what he was building.
So he is working on an anime video streaming sort of website. I've talked to him and he has said that it's fairly easy to transition that into a more general video website if that's what the community wants. So it can be targeted more at like movies and generic and like American TV shows. Um, and I am actually going to be working with him tomorrow regarding sort of walking him through some of the stuff and how to use the application layer software that's going to be coming out.
Cool. I
Cool.
personally really look forward to using that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Is there anybody else that is working on it besides Code Blue on an application layer similar?
So we had two developers reach out a while back, actually around the same time that Code Blue had reached out to us, and um, they sort of had told me what they were interested in building, and I walked them through the concept. I told them yes, that would be entirely possible to build what they wanted to build. They were mainly talking about building something like a forum, sort of like Reddit, on Novusphere. And when I asked them if I could see something in regards to sort of if they could put together sort of a design so I could sort of gauge their skills, because I didn't really have anything to go off at that time, they sort of dropped off the face of the planet. So I'm not sure if they just expected me to hand over some Atmos or some funding and, hope that they did the work. But as I said earlier in the chat, I would expect to see a lot of this in the project. Right, crypto's a very shady space, so I expect there to be people who will just apply and never actually be willing to prove anything. And there might even be people who apply and try to fake their work and pass someone else's work as their own. So it's something we have to be cautionate about in terms of choosing who is worth funding and what we exactly are funding. There's a lot of flakiness when it comes to
I feel like going forward, this should have to do with the consensus model, or be a vote.
Or
I
maybe
think
with the
going
police
I think going
nodes?
I think going forward, it can be a vote like after there's the actual network put together. But I think at this point, pre like network, while the project's in this stage, that voting on stuff like this is very time consuming. So I think social engagement is usually an easier way to sort of see how the community feels in
In
regards
general,
to
I
certain
agree with that.
project. I don't think anyone's against the idea at this point in time of building things that relate to video streaming services. So
Yes.
yes.
So looks like nobody else really has.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions or other announcements or things that they want us to talk about, now would be a good time. I mean, I can give some additional news that I know that's going on in EOS that maybe people aren't following so much.
Yeah, I'm not.
I wouldn't be actually talking about that, Lutz. Recently, very recently, they actually have been forcing mandated KYC on a lot of their users who hold legacy accounts. So there's a lot of people that have just recently, today and yesterday, been locked out of their accounts and they can no longer access their funds.
Wow.
So
They
a lot
being
of people are freaking out about this.
This is Polonians we're
That's
talking about.
yeah.
Yeah. Now they did give a notice last year, if I recall, that they would be mandating KYC, but I feel like a lot of people might have brushed that off and expected a secondary warning, and they sort of got hit out of the blue with it. Yeah, but the thing is, when Bittrex mandated it, they didn't force everyone to switch over to it. What they did was you could still withdraw your funds, you could still log into your account, and the only thing you couldn't do was you couldn't generate new addresses to deposit more funds. And all
As a
the
Bitterx user, I'm going to point out a flaw in that. That is to say, you were able to withdraw your funds, but when you went to do so, the funds wouldn't actually get processed, and you'd get a nasty.
Oh, okay. So maybe this is a more recent change because actually, when they started mandating this, when they first made it so that if you weren't registered, or sorry, if you weren't KYC approved, that you had to, you couldn't generate new addresses. I stopped using Bittrex altogether. So,
Yeah, I know. I had to bail on it after I had money locked up, man.
so yeah, what I noticed is, especially once they had made it so that they made a change to how their internal processing of the ERC20 tokens worked. So even if you had generated addresses to deposit ERC20 tokens, you had to regenerate them. And so if you weren't KYC verified, you couldn't regenerate them. So your options at that point were to either do KYC or to just withdraw whatever you had. So once I saw that happen, I stopped using Bittrex altogether. So this is possibly a change that recently happened. Um, so I mean, this also has to do with one of the reasons that we thought that building on EOS would be very good going forward. It gives us access to native dexes and platforms, obviously like Ethereum, for example, that have dexes. I think would have higher liquidity than some of the other dexes.
Any in mind?
Well, as Road Crypto just pointed out, I mean, some of the existing dexes that are not limited to a specific blockchain, as for example, Crypto Bridge. Or if you want to take a look at one that's more Bitcoin oriented, there's Bisq Network, or
Yeah,
there's
I've
also
seen that
Komodo.
one getting a lot more popular.
So I think we're going to see a lot more of a rise in terms of dexes, especially as KYC has continued to be more and more mandated.
Yeah, a lot of these exchanges are compliance as the industry moves toward American. What's this? Lutz be sending screenshots.
Is it virus?
Now, maybe I'll share some more information about EOS in regards to what we have been looking into. I'm sure there's quite a few people that don't actually know this. So maybe only about 40% of the addresses that hold EOS on the Ethereum, the like EOS ERC20 token, have been 40% in terms of weighted by coins have been registered on the EOS network. However, um, there has been a group that's been working on a piece of software called EOS BIOS, and this is intended to essentially do the boot up of EOS when the blockchain is first launching, which it's expected to first launch sometime after June the 1st, so that's very soon and upcoming. But another thing that EOS BIOS has recently, the team working on it, EOS Canada has recently put in, is they have included an unregistered contract which allows people who have not registered their Ethereum addresses to still be able to claim their coins on the EOS blockchain. So that's been a big concern in the EOS community for a long time now, which is what's going to happen to all these people that do not have coins registered. If how long will it take for them to get it? So it looks like for the most part, these people who might not have registered will still be able to access everything almost right after the network is launched.
That's crazy.
The way the EOS network is being launched is very interesting and unique because it doesn't have predetermined nodes coded into it and bootstrapped to it, so the community has to actually launch the network. So what this means is we might actually see multiple networks launched, and then one will be chosen over time as the main network. So this could take anywhere between 1 to a couple days. I don't know exactly how long it'll take for a main network to be discerned. But the advantage of having your coins in your wallet versus having your coins, let's say, on an exchange might only choose to support the main network. Whereas, let's say, for example, there's a group of people in, and this is just an arbitrary example, but let's say there's a group of people in North America and another group in Europe, and these are two segregated groups, and they both decide to launch EOS chains and try to compete to see who's going to be the main chain. Let's suppose the European one succeeds in becoming the main chain. The North American one doesn't exactly have to pull the plug on their chain. They could actually keep it going as a minority chain, or they could levy it into a side chain. So you could actually end up with coins on multiple chains. So there's a big benefit to actually having your coins in your wallet and registering than to just keep it on the exchange and trust the exchange to do that for you. You could be potentially missing out on things.
That's
I never
interesting.
thought of it. Interesting, yeah.
It's like elastic network blockchain hosting. It's crazy. I've never even heard of that.
So I think other than that, I'm just really interested to see how the usage of the application layer goes in the next week or so as I'm working with CodeBlue and to see how the whole EOS network launch goes. Because, again, like I said before, it's really unique how this has to be done because typically when a coin is launched, you have bootstrap nodes. It's hard-coded into the software. So all other people need to do to join the network is really run that piece of software. But this logic isn't actually hard-coded into the EOS software this time because for potential legal reasons, Block 1 doesn't want to be the one to launch the networks. The community has to do it. It's a very unique and interesting approach.
It really is.
But of course, because they're doing it this way, there's a lot of FUD surrounding it, saying things like there's no incentive for people to honor the ERC20 EOS tokens when someone's launching an EOS chain. And while that's true, I can't possibly see the community ever accepting that as a main net of EOS. Right? So much of the community would get burned in doing so. So I think this just boils down to a lot of FUD. There's a lot of conflict of interest between people who hold Ethereum and people who hold EOS. And if there's anything we've learned in crypto is a lot of people aren't willing to concede this project is good and has potential aspects to it. A lot of it is my camp versus your camp, my project or no other project. So people sort of treat cryptocurrencies like they do sports teams.
That's really more true than you realize.
Yeah, I feel like that model might bring not just competitiveness, but also kind of copycats trying to play the trickery with people. And
well, there's no reason to copy this model. I mean, you don't get a lot of good out of it. It's actually a lot of a hassle to do this because separate software had to be written to essentially bootstrap the network so that everyone could launch safely.
Yeah, it's
the
kind
main
of
reason,
counterintuitive, man.
the main reason that, like I said, Block 1 did this is to sort of alleviate them of legal liability.
Interesting question for
No,
you,
it's actually
too.
the opposite because so what we're doing right now is we're focusing on the application layer of development. And so if you recall what I said before, I'm expecting the application layer of development to be done sometime within July. So this gives at least about a month and a half to sort of see where EOS goes and how it formulates and at that point in time, we're going to have better estimates as to what the project would need in terms of RAM budgeting as well as other resources on EOS. So we'll have a better estimate of how much capital we have to allocate towards EOS. But the point is that there's stuff that we can work on for the time being that's not related to the underlying blockchain itself. So it doesn't actually hinder anything to have potential plans to build on EOS. And in fact, as I mentioned before, with the whole idea of if smart contracts can be written in TypeScript, it actually helps us a lot because we are able to model sort of model how Novusphere will work very easily on the web, and then take that same code and then redeploy it to EOS with very minimal changes. Because TypeScript is a web-based language. It's intended for web. So if anything, what I've been saying since the whole concept of building on EOS has really been proposed to the community is that building on EOS might actually speed up a lot of the development in terms of like the underlying fundamentals of our platform. The dependency on EOS is, okay, so it depends what you mean by that. If you mean whether we have to build on EOS or whether we don't. So we don't have to build on EOS. There's still potential plans to just proceed with status quo, which is to create our own existing blockchain, which solves our problems. But we have noticed is that EOS does address a lot of those problems. So it might not be wise to reinvent the wheel if we don't have to, especially if reinventing the wheel means potentially going through all the tests and the struggles that you have to when you first invent something like that. So
I understand completely in regards to what you're saying, Lutz, but understand that they're going to be forking the software if they do take on this task. So EOS dying has absolutely nothing to do with the software.
Well, that's not necessarily true. We might not fork the software in terms of using their software.
Oh, that's actually really interesting. Then
What I meant was we might. So the two possibilities right now seems to be continue with the status quo, which is to build our own unique blockchain. That is a possibility, which is what you said. Instead of just purely building our own blockchain, we can fork the existing EOS software and build based on that. But I'm not as comfortable as doing that personally as I am actually just building my own software. I think that would actually be less of a burden on me. And the last option, which I think is actually the most convenient at this point in time, is actually building on top of EOS directly. So on top of the mainnet of EOS, so not
I have
launching
to
a
agree with
separate
Lutz
network.
and say that that's hazardous, man.
So again, nothing's set in stone at this point in time. But we'll see what happens, and we are going to have at least a month and a half worth of EOS mainnet like uptime to evaluate really what our limitations are if we choose to go that route.
Interesting debate for sure. I'm definitely paying attention.
Well, what do you mean by simpler functions? So all of that's possible with the just the application layer alone. What you need though is the application layer needs to get its data source from somewhere, so it needs to get that data source from. You're talking about building things on top of the application layer. So this has nothing to do with the underlying blockchain itself. Like all of what you just said, books, audio, video stream, this is all stuff that gets built on the application layer. It doesn't really have much to do with the underlying blockchain. The underlying blockchain is really what governs things like token governance and the bounty system and other things similar to that.
Just to
So,
clarify for you, Lutz, I don't know if you've checked out Guru's stuff, but he's making a video. I don't know, I'm kind of cutting out. He's making a video streaming site. It's not done, but it looks like it's coming along.
so the things you're talking about, Lutz, are things that get built on top of the application layer. But what I'm talking about is the underlying blockchain. So for the underlying blockchain, there's still a question mark of how we approach this. Do we make our own network? Do we fork existing software? Do we build on an existing network? So those are really the three routes, right? So, like I said before, building on EOS does actually solve our a lot of our needs in terms of what we need in a project, and really no other blockchain project really addresses this in a meaningful way, as well as EOS does. So it's not something that we need to do. As I said, there's still two other options, which is to build on a fork of EOS, or to build either completely on our own separate piece of software. So we're not entirely dependent on this, and there's no guarantee that we go that route. I don't know much about Burst, but someone had linked something else previously in the chat. But if you go over the white paper, you can see what our requirements are, and maybe if you think that Burst meets those requirements, you can I can take more of a look into it. But one of the main requirements that rules out a lot of blockchains is if you have to pay fees for transacting on the blockchain, then it's a no-go. It doesn't fit our model that's required to make the project actually succeed, because I don't feel that any project that requires you to pay monetary value for actions on the network will ever be mass adopted by users, because users will see it as themselves losing money. And it's part of the reason why I don't think a platform like Memo.cash on Bitcoin Cash can ever truly get big. That's part of the reason why Steem was so easy to adopt, was you didn't actually need to put any money into Steem. Well, the issue with forking it, right? Okay, so let's say we take an existing blockchain. Let's talk about what IPBC did. Okay, so let's say we take an existing blockchain. So they're based off digital note, which is same tech as like what Monero's built on. And let's say you remove the fee from it, or let's say you make the fee really, really small, like what Bitcoin Cash does. You haven't solved any of your scalability problems in the long term. And more importantly, if you get rid of the fee, because of the security model of that blockchain, it's bad. The security model no longer holds up. So it's not as simple as just forking it, right? Because these type of blockchains are built with certain security models in mind. And not to mention, if you fork an existing project, and this is true for building on EOS as well, you take all the baggage that comes along with that project, right? All the technical debt. So this also is true for building on EOS, right? If we build on EOS, we take technical debt that EOS might have. And the same thing is true for people who choose to build on Ethereum. So
Any more questions?
no, but again, just to cover the fee thing, right? Really the only blockchains. I know there's a few outside of this, but the ones that come to mind are all the blockchains that have, are the two of the blockchains that were built by Dan, which is Steem and now EOS, which really had the whole feeless model built in mind, especially into the security model of it. So it's not as wise of an idea, let's say, to take a blockchain that's built on incentivizing miners not to do something malicious with fees, or otherwise, stakers to do this. So, because if you have a feeless model, you have to limit network resource consumption, which is what EOS and Steem do. If you just took, let's say, Monero, and okay, let's say you took Monero, and let's say you turned it into proof of stake, so it was zero fee, and people were staking to and being paid during inflation. The thing is, though, you still have to build in actually the underlying thing that prevents spam on EOS and Steem, which is you have to build in the bandwidth model to prevent people from just spamming transactions and limiting how much people can spam transactions. So at that point, it's like, well, you've built in the same model that EOS and Steem uses. So, but maybe you weren't here for this, but another one of what things that we had talked about in EOS, and I don't want to, continue saying this on and on to think that, that that we're dead set on this, is that it gives us network effect and community effect. It exposes us to a large community of existing people, and it opens us up to being able to interact with a lot of the potential applications that are going to be developed on EOS. I mean, just looking at Dan's previous projects, we can expect there to be DEXs on EOS. We can expect something like Steam 2.0 to be on EOS. So, given the fact that we can expect something like Steam to be on EOS, I think we can also expect other social media type platforms to be built on EOS. And all of this goes in line with very similar concepts of what we plan on building with Novusphere. So I think overall the ecosystem fits very well. And yeah, what Road Crypto said is correct, which is we are sort of waiting anyways because we're working on the application layer of the project, which is to enable things like the audio, the movies, the other stuff that you talked about, for that stuff to be built over the next month and a half. So.
Yeah, all in all, I'd say that this is a pretty controversial situation.
I agree, and that's why I've
put it out
sort of been
there.
letting the community decide really on the route that we want to go. I'm okay with following status quo if that's what the community wants to do. It's just that obviously status quo means that there's a longer time in development because it means that we don't have as much of a security model to borrow from, right? Less code is pre-audited. We have to build a lot of that ourselves. We have to test a lot of it ourselves, and then we have to rigorously go over the security of it ourselves.
Generally speaking, I always opt for the thing that speeds up software delivery, but I will say this about the community, and I can only speak for myself as a holder. Dudes are savagely die-hard holders here, hodlers here. I don't think anybody's too concerned about waiting a little long.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you, but we'll see what the community thinks is the best choice in this
Yeah,
regard.
no, I agree completely. Like, I see the merits in the EOS situation, and especially if it becomes really big inside of EOS, their community would be pretty easy to adopt over to this project. So it
Yeah,
would be
like I
pretty.
said, one of the major things is none of the economics of how actually Novusphere works really changes too much if moving over to Novusphere. All the underlying, mechanics at an economic level really stay the same. So we don't
I'm
actually
curious how it would work. Would we become an asset on EOS, become
Yeah, so it would be a token on EOS. And what I
token?
mentioned
Yeah.
before was also, so the way EOS works is by holding EOS and staking EOS on their blockchain, you get access to more of the network's total resources. And this is also how it works on Steam. This is the bandwidth one. But what we can also do, and what we already know is possible from our own research, this is like stuff that me and Unicron have been looking into and talking with EOS devs about, um, we know that it's possible to sub-delegate. So, for example, let's say Atmos as a whole has some percentage of the network's resources. We can sub-delegate those resources to the Atmos holders. So you would get resources on EOS for holding EOS, and you would also get additional resources for holding Atmos. So
Double stake.
there's a lot of interesting things and a lot more flexibility of what you can do in terms of how development works on EOS than say another blockchain like Ethereum. So I think what our project is maybe one of a few that have reason to build on EOS into another blockchain like Ethereum. So.
Yo, how do I become a certified Bitcoin professor?
Lutz mentioned
I
he's
believe
a
that's a
certified
question for Lutz.
Which
I want to become one.
Did you go to Crypto Compare and take test questions, or?
Yo, dude, I'm down. I want to become one. That's amazing. Yo, I'm Microsoft certified also. But like, I want to be crypto certified. Fantastic. Sorry to interrupt you. I just noticed that he's like an official crypto pro, man. Anyway, I gotta cut out. Riveting stuff as usual. Asphyxia, thank you for your time, man. I'll catch you later.
Yeah, see, I think this is about it for the meeting, unless anyone else has any questions or things that they'd like to talk about.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Take care, guys. We'll see you guys at the next meeting.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll have a replay on this and some things in the description for people to link to that were discussed in the meeting.
Thanks for that, Mr. Wicks.